All right, folks, we are back again. This week we are racing at Belgium, a track that it's very easy to follow on. Lots of slipstream, straightforward strategy, but all the corners seem to fall under one of two categories: either very easy corners that you can be very aggressive on, or corners that are just brutal for grip and notorious for spinning people out. So we'll go over all the corners and give some tips and also talk about the race afterwards. So let's get to it. Starting the lap. Pretty much brake just a touch before the red here. And the key is not only knowing when to start braking, but knowing when to stop braking because you want to carry the appropriate amount of speed through the corner, coast through the apex, nice and smooth on the power. Don't want to jam on it too much on the exit. You can use the curb on the outside even when you're getting on the throttle because it is very flat and has plenty of grip. And pretty much this is just barely even a corner anymore. It's completely flat out here. You can save a little bit of time just by being as smooth as possible on the controls. Obviously, on race pace, you don't want to get a stupid warning or a penalty up at this hill. All right, the end of the long straight here. Brake a touch before the red. The traction can be tricky coming out of the right-hander, so be careful about that. Also, the curbs are raised on the inside of these two corners. Be careful of that as well. Squirt of the gas after the right, heading into the left, and just simply coast through it. Don't go too far on the outside of the exit of the second corner here because you need to be nice and set up to take the right-hander that follows this junction. And speaking of that right-hander, while you're here, on race fuel, maybe a tap of the brake, but on qualifying fuel, you can just leave off here. You can take the curb on the inside here, unlike the previous two corners, because this is completely flat. Just be careful not to hit the grass on the exit. Here you brake just a touch after the curb starts on your left. And it's just like turn one. It's not about knowing when to start braking, but also when to stop braking. Once you find that nice speed to carry through the corner, just coast through it and nice and smooth on the throttle on the exit. On a lot of these corners, in terms of the throttle, smooth is fast. Now coming to this corner here, even though the curbs are raised on the entrance and exit of the corner, you can take them. I don't like braking on this outside curb much because it can unsettle the car, but other than that, the inside curb and the exit curb, you can take them for all they're worth here. And this is one of those corners that can be tricky because you don't want to clip the inside of the curb as it is raised, and taking it at such high speed will spin the car around, which everyone has probably done at some point. On low fuel, it's just leave off the throttle and coast through the apex, get strong on the throttle on the exit. The curb is safe on the outside. On race fuel, maybe a touch of the brake will be necessary. On low fuel runs, hug the inside to save time. On race pace, just let it coast to the outside. Keep those tire temps as low as possible. Not a difficult corner this. If you take too much inside curb, it can unsettle the car, so I don't recommend it. And this corner, you don't want to go all the way to the outside on the exit because you want to set yourself up nicely for the left-hander that soon follows. Brake pretty much right on red, maybe a touch before it, and find that balance of getting close to the inside but not hugging the curb too much. And here, this is like the long left-hander at the end of Sector 2 in Austria, where there's two schools of thought here. You can either not take the inside curb at all and carry more speed, Or maybe let off the throttle a little bit more here because you don't have to touch the brake. It's just letting off the throttle and take a lot of curb. It's when you take just a little bit of curb that the grip gets tricky. So, like I said, either take no curb or all the curb. Here you see me take all the curb. And of course, there's plenty of grip on that curb on the exit as well. You can pull back to the left to set yourself up for the next to last braking point on the left. Speaking of set braking point, we're right to it. These corners will just go bang, bang, bang here in the last sector. But here you pretty much brake right on red, and you can really take the inside. There's like a nice flat green curb on the inside of the kind of trenched curb here on the inside. And while it does make it a little bit later of a throttle application on the exit, I guess would be the best way to put it. You got to wait longer to get the full throttle. The amount of time you save cutting off that much angle of the corner more than makes up for it. Nothing fancy here. This is a flat out corner, but something I do want to point out is that grazing the curbs do actually very slightly scrape off just the tiniest bit of speed. So try to avoid doing that. And final corner, brake just the slightest touch before red. And so the first corner, you brake, do all your braking, you coast through it, and in between the corners, do just a squirt of gas and then just the slightest touch of the brake as you turn in for the left-hander. Don't want to turn in too early for it, and because then you'll accidentally early apex it and make it so you can't carry as much speed through the corner, which in the end makes it so for this medium straight that you don't get on the throttle quite as early. So taking the normal apex or even a little bit of a later apex on the second corner helps carry more speed down the straight. And yeah, that's it. This track, all in all, is not that difficult to drive, especially on race pace if you're just being careful in terms of not getting penalties on the curves that you take a lot of, and um, not doing a good job of avoiding the curves that can cause you a lot of problems. This track's a lot of risk management. I mean, there's a lot of risks that you can take throughout a lap, which may be worth it on your qualifying runs, but once you're in the race, just like I always say, not being a hero, going for an extra couple tenths a lap and just nailing that consistency down. Because as much as I've talked about consistency and how some of these races in this league can be a shit show and be ready for everything, I feel like last week's race just exacerbates that more. I can't emphasize that enough. Consistency is key here. There's a lot of drivers that have the potential to win on any day because up front, the pace is pretty close, but the consistency doesn't match the pace. So it's basically who's just the most solid driver is the race winner, not even necessarily the fastest driver on a lot of these races so far this season. So everything I say about risk management and thinking about the long game just it really just goes to show how important that part of the tips videos are, and I can't emphasize them enough. And this race will be just the same. This race has a history of being a shit show in TFR because people being overly aggressive, hit curbs they shouldn't. Safety, we've had tons of safety cars, tons of incidents, you name it. And the way that the races have gone this season, I expect the same thing to happen. So, like I always say, let everyone else get over aggressive around you and take the free points that happen when your competition messes up. There's been a lot of mistakes by even the front runners, and that's a really big opportunity for someone to sneak in, get their first win, or make a championship run out of just getting consistent podiums and not even necessarily winning races. So, who's going to start getting their act together and start nailing consistent races first? I mean, whoever that is, honestly, is probably going to win the championship. But the best way to get that consistency down is putting in the reps on heavy fuel and light fuel alike, getting a feel for the car in both qualifying and race scenario before the day of the race. I always say it, races in this league are not won on Fridays, they're won Sunday through Thursday.